Hi, my learners and my subscribers to my channel, Learn with Mr. Mwenya. Today, I'm discussing a very interesting lesson that we find in European history, and the title being Russian Society Structure in the 19th Century and Causes of the 1905 Revolution. The Russian society and its structure in the 19th century and the causes of 1905 revolution. Now, if you can see from here, from top to bottom, I've deliberately decided to put into perspective how the society in Russia existed around that time. So you can see from the top here, we have got the Tsar. This was the title that Russian rulers or emperors assumed, or it was the name they were given or they called themselves. So the Tsar was at the top of the Russian society and the royal family. So these are the people that had the power. These are the people that controlled. These people had the political authority to run everyone who is below here. So we can see at the top we have got the Tsar. Then just below him we have got the nobility class or the nobles and also the clergymen. So we are talking about the bishops. The church controlled much of the power within the Russian society, and this was just common to other empires around Europe. So we have got the nobles. These are people that were closely linked to the royal family. So these people was just a small population, yet they wield so much power. Small population, and they shared the power with the empire, and they owned large pieces of land. The church owned large pieces of land. It was a very respected sector in the Russian society. Then we have got the army or the vassals. So obviously, for a king or a society to feel protected, you expect that the army should be very powerful. So the army or the vassals, they belonged to an elite class within the Russian society, and these had the job or the responsibility to protect the king, the nobles, and including all the people of the Russian society. So these people were well respected, and they exchanged their protection they offered with the land. So they were given large pieces of land, and then they exchanged that with protection. Then you have got the capitalists or the industrial owners. So these people, they are the ones that were in charge of the banks. They owned banks, they produced goods and services, and owned large pieces of land. So you understand that for any society to be sustained, it requires goods and services, and all these things were in the hands of the capitalists or the industrial owners, these people that owned these services. And then just below there, you have got the working class. These, we call them the middle class. These are the ones that worked for the industrial workers. These are the people that were considered in the civil service. You're talking about the lawyers, you're talking about the teachers, you're talking about health, all these sectors that make the society to tick. They belong to this middle class society. And these were the majority, obviously, together with these people that we find in the lower section of this pyramid. These are peasants, or others were called the serfs. Now, these also had the biggest population of the Russian society. These belonged to the agriculture sector, and they worked the land and produced all the raw materials that were needed in the industries. Now, when you look at all this society, you find that a small section of people controlled much of the Russian Empire, and the working class as well as the peasants, who were the majority, these are the ones that kept the economy running. In fact, when you remove the working class or the middle class and you remove the peasants and the slaves, you realize that the Russian society could not stand. So time came when the middle class, together with the peasants, started to demand for a portion of economic right. They also wanted to start enjoying the fruits of their labor. I mean, you cannot enjoy a situation where you are the ones that are producing goods and services, yet the salaries that are given to you are very small. You will not enjoy the situation where you are producing money or the economy for the government, yet the working conditions are very poor. So it leads us to what is called now the Russian Revolution. So in 1905, the middle class started to demand for certain things, or there were other causes that propelled the Russian society to react to that pyramid structure that you have seen. One of the causes of the 1905 revolution is that the peasants started to demand to have access to personal land. Yes, they worked the land. The peasants, the slaves, they worked the land. Yet they only worked for others and they were given little or nothing. So they started to pressure Tsar's government of the need to have access to land. But that did not seem to be an easy way out for them. So they decided to demand for access to land. Then you have got the industrial and factory workers demanding for living and working conditions. If you have seen there, these are the people that were found in factories producing goods and services. They also wanted better living conditions. You want to have good hospitals, you want to have good schools, you want to have good roads, you want to communication sector should be well for them to enjoy. So you realize that they also demanded a portion of better working and living conditions. Then you see, when this society was caught up in all these demands, Tsar's government decided to engage in a Russo-Japanese war over a territory called Manchuria, which belonged to China. Now, in other words, the Tsar, having realized that there is so much discontent within the Russian society, he tried to engage in a war with Japan over Manchuria, which belonged to China. By then, China had not yet become a superpower. So, competing for this piece of land, he had hoped, Tsar Nicholas II had hoped that if they win that war, it is going to bring jubilation and excitement among people. Alas, they lost the 1905 Russo-Japanese War. That just brought more discontentment in people. People became more angry, the soldiers and others. Then the liberals, these are a group of people within the Russian society that hoped that the power that the Tsar we have seen that he had to himself, including a good portion of the nobles, had, should not remain with them. Instead, we should have a constitutional government. What do we mean? It means that there should be a parliament put in place in Russia where the authority of the Tsar will be reduced. Then the parliament is going to take over power. You understand that, for example, in Zambia, where we are, or where I live myself, you realize that the president does not have the power to just detect anything. It is subject for parliament for approval. If a parliament cannot agree with him, it means that that suggestion falls out. So definitely the liberals started to demand for constitutional government, which was not the case at the time. Also, there was demand for a Bill of Rights. You know, you're talking about freedom of association, you're talking about political powers, you're talking about freedom of association. People should have the right to express themselves. In the Russian society by 1905, this was not the case. So people started to demand for those right of assembly, right of association, right to form political parties, right to belong to trade unions. Unfortunately, that was not coming forth. And last but not the least, you are talking about the ineffectiveness of the Tsar. Generally, you are talking about a government where the society, the Russian society, the majority, are demanding for an improved way of dealing with challenges. Unfortunately, the Tsar could not just afford all these demands that came almost at once. And as such, on January 1922, 1905, a group of industrial workers, the elite class, this group of people here that I've talked about, marched together to go to the palace of Tsar on January 1922. They were carrying placards, hoping that they can present those demands before the Tsar, so that the Tsar can address them. There were in thousands of them. They marched as a group of Russian industrial workers to go to the Tsar. Alas, or unfortunately, the royal troops, the royal soldiers who protected the Tsar, when they saw a group of people marching, making noise, obviously demanding, carrying placards, they decided to open fire at this defenseless group of people, and a group number of people died on January 22, 1905, a day that is referred to as Bloody Sunday in the Russian history or calendar. And what followed is a reaction, is a wave of reaction when people now started to burn, the peasants started to burn their masters' fields, farms. You have got the industrial workers stopping to go for work, and just there was chaos, disorderliness. But the good part about Tsar is that Tsar Nicholas managed to use the army to protect him and to protect state property, such that the revolution in 1905 could not go further. They managed to bring the situation under control, and Tsar was forced to issue an edict, or to issue a promissory document, which is called the October Manifesto. October Manifesto, where he promised the Russian people that he was going to work on certain things that they demanded. It was just a promissory document, not that they were fulfilled. In one of the videos, I may just share what was promised and if indeed those promises were fulfilled. This has been Teacher Mwenya discussing the Russian society structure and the 1905 revolution. Until next time, bye.